Retrograde Venus, conjunct the Sun in Leo, begs the great romantic question, are we meant to be together? Or did we find each other, only to go our own separate ways again? Next, on Horoscope Highlights.
Hi, everyone. My name is Laura. I'm the Director of Fulfillment here at Astrology Hub, and we're gearing up for something so special. The Health, Wealth, and Fulfillment Workshop Series featuring world-class astrologers Georgia Stathis, Judith Hill, and Michael Bryan. Combined, these teachers have over 100 years of experience. If you'd like to join as a student and learn some of the most hands-on techniques for bringing more health, wealth, and fulfillment into your life, join us at the waitlist at astrologyhub.com/workshop waitlist. Hope to see you there.
Hello, my name is Christopher Renstrom, and I'm your horoscope columnist here on Astrology Hub. And this week, I want to talk to you about the retrograde Venus Sun conjunction in Leo taking place on August 13th, which follows a retrograde Venus Uranus square taking place on August 9th. Now, let me go ahead and break this down a little bit for you. Retrograde planets are the period of time when a planet appears to be moving backwards or reverses its direction in the sky. When a planet turns retrograde, like for instance, Mercury can turn retrograde, or Venus, Mars, Jupiter, or Saturn, when they're in their period of retrograde, they are said to act in the reverse way that they would when they are moving forward in the sky. For instance, Mercury is the planet of sales and transactions. And so purchases are meant to go off without a second thought or worry when Mercury is moving forward in the sky. However, when Mercury is moving backwards in the sky, that's when you're in danger of making a very poor purchase or buying a lemon without really knowing it. So this is what gives retrogrades a bit of a reputation for check under the covers to make sure you know what you're getting into beforehand. A retrograde also refers to a return to something. Maybe it's a return to a situation that you left in your life, or maybe it's returning a piece of merchandise because you found out it is a lemon. Okay, so there can be this idea of returning to something that you've left, or something returning into your life. A lot of times during like a Mercury retrograde, for instance, we may bump into people that we haven't seen in years, or we may be contacted by them. This is something that often is associated with the planet when it's retrograde. A Mars retrograde, for instance, might bring you back into contact with a former rival or an enemy. You know, this person comes back into your life, or the pattern of aggression or rivalry or fighting is something that repeats during a Mars retrograde, where you have to confront what your feelings are about fighting and try to master them. So what can we expect with a Venus retrograde? Well, we've spoken quite a bit about Venus retrograde on previous episodes, but another aspect of Venus retrograde that we haven't really talked about is the return of a former lover, okay? A Venus retrograde can often signal or presage the return of a former lover into your life. Maybe it was someone you had a secret crush on in high school. Maybe it's someone whom you tried to get together with, but circumstances were such that you never could get together before. Or maybe it's someone that all of a sudden comes into your life and professes this great love that they've been having for you for years and years and years, and you're kind of like left a little bit awestruck, surprised, and perhaps even intrigued. Tell me more. Okay, these are things that can happen during a Venus retrograde. In general, it's going to be more so when Venus is retrograde in Leo. Why? Because Leo is the zodiac sign of the heart. It's the zodiac sign of amour. It's the zodiac sign of love and romance. And moreover than even that, we have an exact conjunction of the Sun and Venus retrograde that's taking place, as I mentioned before, on August 13th. This is known as Venus Kazimi in certain astrological circles, where Venus, because she makes an exact conjunction to the Sun, instead of becoming diminished in her light, becomes resplendent in her light. And so this energy of Venus permeates through your life or whatever area of the chart that this Sun retrograde Venus conjunction is taking place in. So it's the return of this love, a return of someone that you had known before, who may be professing feelings that you knew about or perhaps didn't know about. But this is more than just sort of a romantic twist in a novel. It actually puts me in mind of a certain predicament which takes place in this wonderful film, which is called Past Lives, which was directed by Celine Song. It's a wonderful film, and I strongly recommend going out and seeing it. In this film, Past Lives, we're introduced to this concept of In-Yeon, which in Korean, it's the character Nora says it stands in for the word fate or providence, but it's much more subtle and much more intricate to that. In-Yeon refers to the strings of providence that tie people together through their past lives and through their various reincarnations. Now, it doesn't necessarily talk about someone you're fated to be with. It really talks about these fated encounters, but it takes place on a variety of different levels. For instance, In-Yeon could be a simple brush of clothing as two strangers pass each other in the street. And this simple interaction, this brushing of clothes, attests to the fact that they had shared past lives together. Or In-Yeon may manifest as lovers or people who get married. And so it is said that, if lovers who get married, they must have known each other several times in previous incarnations, and this is what is coming about. And so I find it to be a beautifully subtle and intricate concept. Here in the West, when we talk about past lives or soulmates, there's often a lot of Sturm und Drang involved. Okay, there's we're meant to be together, and so you're maybe trying to convince someone that you're going on a date with, that you're soulmates and you're meant to be together, and the other person might not share the same view. They might be like, I'm just going on a date and I don't know if we're meant to be together. And so this can cause a great deal of suffering if this doesn't come about, this reunion, this recognition of us having shared past lives together. What I love about this Korean concept is that past lives is something that's taken for granted. It's commonplace. But in this description of In-Yeon, it's also rather pedestrian. You can have a shared past life with someone that you brush clothes with, rub elbows with on the subway train. And what is really beautiful about that is that it talks about the interweaving threads that we all play in one another's lives. Okay, that it could be something that's very deep and powerful, dramatic and impactful, or it can be something that's casual and, as I said, pedestrian. But what it speaks to is a shared history, and it speaks to a care about that shared history. You may have known this person in a past life. That's why you're encountering this person again. And how do you engage someone that you knew before, that you don't remember, and that you see again? Well, it should be done clearly with courtesy, and it should be done with respect, and it should be done with a deep appreciation. And if you just follow those simple ideas and expand it out into all your relations in your life, whether they're intimate or whether they're casual, it talks to a beautiful honoring and respecting that goes in our encounters. And what I like about that is that it's very Venusian. It's very loving, and it's very honoring to the people who mean the most, but also to the people who may very well mean the least. So in this story of Past Lives, which is a film that came out this year, we're introduced to two characters, Na-young and Hae-sung. And they're childhood friends, and they hung out in school and all these sorts of things. And he's kind of someone she goes to when she's troubled or upset. And he's kind of reassuring in this, childlike way. I mean, childlike, they're both children, And one day, it's announced that Na-young is going to be moving to Canada with her family, and she will be adopting the English name Nora. And so the mothers bring the two kids together for a final, say goodbye, and the kids go on a walk and they sort of meander and spend time together. And at last it's time for Nora to leave, and Hae-sung can only tell Nora bye before she goes. And she goes, and 12 years pass. 12 years pass, so maybe they're about maybe 9 or 10 or 11. So they're in their early 20s when they come back into contact with one another again. Nora's talking with her mother on the phone, and her mother mentions, do you remember Hae-sung? And she's like, oh, yeah, he was a kid that I kind of like had a crush on, actually. And she's like, well, he made a comment on your father's Facebook page, and would you sort of, be against or be into maybe meeting him again or something like that? He's been asking about you. And she's like, sure. And so Hae-sung contacts her, and, they're in their 20s, and, there's a friend request, and she answers it, and they're talking. And as they talk, what's interesting is that he's very much thinking very much of her, yearning for her, asking questions about her. And she's focused on becoming a writer and on setting up her life here in the West. And, meanwhile, he's gone to China to, I think it's a language exchange program or something like that. But he asks her why she never came back to Seoul, that now that she's older, why did she never really come back to Seoul? And she responds instead, well, maybe one day you'll come and visit me in New York, and he's like, okay, maybe I will. And so they continue this talk, but after a while, they're like Skyping or something like that. But after a while, Nora puts an end to it because, well, she doesn't really say why she does, but you can tell, or one speculates that she puts an end to it because it's nostalgic. It's pulling her back into a life that she no longer identifies with. She lives in New York City right now. She's into being a writer. She's speaking English. She's English identified. He's very sweet. There's a pull, but she's not that child anymore. She's a young adult looking to make her way in the world. And so she puts, a sort of end to it. And basically that's it. Another 12 years pass. This is what I love about Korean dramas. Why I'm such a fond fan of Korean rom-coms. It's like years can pass, lots of years often pass in Korean dramas, but it adds to the action, or it adds to, not the action, it adds to the depth. It adds to the profundity of these encounters. And it's just a lovely way of storytelling. Another 12 years pass, and Hae-sung contacts her again. And this time Nora is married to this writer. I think his name's Arthur. His name's Arthur. She's married to this writer named Arthur, and he's written this best-selling novel called Boner. Okay. He like shows you, where we're going with that one. And she's a playwright, and, they've established themselves. They're writers, they're married, and they really have a wonderful marriage. And Hae-sung contacts her again, and says that he's coming to New York, and he wants to meet with her. And he's just broken up with his girlfriend, and he's coming to New York. And so Arthur, Nora's husband, is clearly a little upset, but not anxious. Okay, we'll go with anxious. He's clearly a little bit anxious. He's not going to deny her seeing this fellow who was kind of like her childhood sweetheart. And he comments on how romantic and beautiful that is. And he's like, well, I'm not going to be the bad guy, the evil, callous husband who's like going to, insist that you don't. Of course, you have to go see him. And she's like, okay, but he's unsettled. I mean, they have this bond, and it's a very powerful bond. They keep sort of brushing up their clothes against each other. They keep brushing shoulders, elbows again, over and over. It's In-Yeon, and she jokes and says, oh, In-Yeon, because she's told him about the concept of Inyon. She says, In-Yeon is just what Korean girls tell a guy when they're trying to sleep with him, something like that. And he's like, yeah, but he's not altogether convinced that that's really what Nora is thinking. And so Nora and Haesung, they get together and they visit and they see the sights in New York. And at first they're like, whoa, they can't believe, like, you know, here you are, whoa. It's like after all this time, and they meander like that last day in the park before she moved away. They meander through the East Village. They meander onto a boat that goes to the Statue of Liberty. They meander through New York, which is a beautiful city to meander through. It's having lived there for 28 years, it's the best place to just meander and to comment and to feel one another's souls again, and they do. And he asks her questions like, what would have happened had you stayed? Would we have fallen in love? Would we have broken up? Would we have gotten married? Would we have had children? And so this is the nature of their conversation. And as this unfolds, I mean, ultimately it, comes to them, having a final meeting, and her husband's there, and he, kind of feels left out, but he doesn't want to leave his wife alone, with this guy. But what's kind of fantastic about this final scene where they're talking is that Haesung is talking to Nora mostly in Korean, and she speaks Korean with him. And what you get this feeling of is that there is a past life. There is a different identity. There is a different Nora that she shares with Haesung that she doesn't share with her husband, and it gets you sort of wondering, is that the draw? But then you're also wondering, how much is she really drawn to him? I mean, or it's the layering of the drawing that she feels towards him. I mean, obviously, it's a childhood sweetheart, and she's seeing him at another time in her life. And so that's going to be nostalgic. But there's also this calling of a culture and a country that she left behind. And there is this feeling of Inyon, no matter how much she jokes about it, that exists between the two of them. At the same time, their lives are different. Their circumstances are different. And what I love about this meandering, this meditative conversation, quality, encounter that they have is that what it brings up, and this is how it ties into the Venus retrograde, is what would happen if someone like that came back into your life again? I mean, we all have our fantasy, we would say the things that were never said, feel the things that were never felt. And perhaps this was, the path not taken, and it would have been a different life or something along those lines. Or the person might get in contact with us and we might be like, whoa, dodged the bullet with that one. Boy, was that person like a mess. Okay, that might be part of the reaction too. But when Venus reintroduces someone like this, it's not to tantalize, it's not to seduce, it's not to torture. It's really, and retrogrades can do this, it's really to reconnect on a deep and a soulful level and reconnect to the notion of love. Now Haesung is obviously looking for someone that he had lost all those years ago when Nora had moved. And they enjoy a wonderful rapport and a wonderful familiarity. But you also feel like Haesung has come to put an end to this as well. These old loves can be like ghosts that haunt us. They can haunt us with the possibility. They can haunt us in a reverie. They come back. We don't always say, okay, here's my reality check. And, I'm glad I didn't make this choice. More often than not, they come back and they stir something in the heart, and and they remind us of the choices we made. Not only do they draw us back into the past, into a nostalgia, but they also remind us of the choices that we made, and they remind us of the heartache that comes with those choices that we make, you know. And this is actually a very beautiful message. It's a very beautiful message that the film has, because many times, you know, the circumstances are different. We're the same person, but we're also different than we were before. And so it really asks us to do something loving. You know, very few of us leave our, you know, marriages or our relationships or our single status and throw ourselves into the arms of this person. It actually has happened. I mean, I've read for a number of clients in which someone has come back and there was this feeling of being finally reconnected with that special someone. But that's something that's very rare. More often than not, it's a chance to kind of settle the ghosts that lie between us. You know, maybe someone never found the love and you were the special love. You're then in a position where you can help them to make peace with that. You know, the fascinating thing about Venus is that Venus always deals with the person who is the beloved, you know, the object of admiration and adoration. There's the beloved, there's beauty, and then there's the beholder, you know, and it's the eye of the beholder that beauty holds. Okay, so usually we're one of the two, you know, either we're the beauty or we're the beholder. And it was a question that Plato once asked, which is who is more powerful, beauty or the beholder? And you got a feeling like Plato was veering in the direction of beholder. That it's the person who beholds that ultimately defines or describes what beauty is. And you see Nora sort of searching his eyes and his expression to see who is that Nora that he fell in love with, you know, and she's intrigued. She knows that it's not her, or at least not who she is now, but she's intrigued as to that Nora he's carried in her heart. She's intrigued as to that Nasong, you know, that he carries in his heart, and she knows that she cannot be that. So when Venus retrogrades and forms its conjunction to the sun in Leo this week, you may, as I've just described, find yourself in a situation where you are reuniting with a past love, or you may find yourself in a situation where you are meeting someone who is otherwise engaged or unavailable or between airplane flights and came into town for one day, you know, something that is a kind of might have been relationship, you know, something that maybe a passing of the shoulders. So it may be the return of a love, or you may find that someone is projecting their love onto you or a need for you. And you may find yourself in a situation where you are making that person's heart right by not answering it and by putting that to rest in a loving way. You know, you may find yourself in a position where you're saying, you know, I'm not that person, you know, and I'm sorry. Or you may be someone who is the beholder and you want someone to be that, and that someone that you want to be that may be telling you, I'm not that person. These are the things that happen underneath the retrograde. And if it's not happening to you, then you may have an opportunity in the life of a loved one or a child or a friend or a coworker who is suffering some sort of very painful love situation. You may be in a position to help that person find peace, to help that person find resolution outside of bashing, you know, the lover or talking about toxicity or something like that. But in being very real and very heart to heart, you know, the more loving that we can be in these moments of love, especially these moments of love that are melancholic or aren't going to work out the way that we want them to, or because of circumstances can't possibly be, the more loving rather than disillusioned, the more caring rather than skeptical, the more generous rather than vengeful, the more we can come from that place, the more that we can come from that Venusian place, the more loving and Venusian we can be. And Venus, like Jupiter, is a benefic. The more, with Jupiter, it's the good that you get is the good that you give. And with Venus, of course, the love that you get, from all the different relationships in your life, from the deep and profound ones to the casual ones, the more love that you get, the more love that you can give. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Horoscope Highlights. Please don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Your support means a lot. See you next week.